right, welcome to the Lebanese Physicians Podcast. This is episode number 4, and today I will be interviewing Dr. Wael Al-Maraachli. Dr. Al-Maraachli is currently an associate professor in pulmonary and critical care medicine at the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine. He specializes in non-tuberculous mycobacterial treatment and diagnosis, and also in intensive care. Dr. Al-Maraachli, how are things today in San Diego?
Hi, Khalil. Dr. Diab, sorry.
No need
Khalil
to call me doctor. No need to call me doctor.
Things back here in is it okay to call you Khalil, or do we have to keep it professional, Dr. Diab, during
No,
this podcast?
you can call me Khalil. I'm not a doctor.
Thank you. Anyways, things are beautiful, sunny, and about 70 degrees Fahrenheit right now in San Diego. So it's a beautiful winter here in San Diego.
Pretty similar to DC. It's beautiful, sunny, but 36 degrees Fahrenheit. But we get used to it. 70 is like summertime for me right now.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Maraachli. So tell us a bit about yourself. Like, how did you get to UCSD, and where were you born? How were and how's your connection to Lebanon?
Sure, Khalil. Yep, we'll start from the beginning, I guess. So, I am Lebanese American. I grew up in Dubai. My parents moved to Dubai when the Civil War broke out in 1975, as did many other Lebanese of their generation. And so I grew up in Dubai in the 80s, went to school there, graduated from high school in the mid-90s, and went to AUB, the American University of Beirut. And I ended up living in Lebanon for 9 years. I did my undergraduate degree at AUB, and then my medical school degree, along with a year of internship at the American University Hospital. After that, I did, as the vast majority of the medical school graduates did in the early 2000s, we left the country. As we've all experienced, it's like our medical school or our country is a conveyor belt, producing doctors and exporting them to other countries, mostly the U.S.
Right.
So after I left the U.S., after I left Lebanon, I came to the U.S. to start a residency in internal medicine at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics in Iowa City, Iowa, right in the Midwest.
Yeah, I remember we were living next to each other in the apartment, that small apartment building at the time.
We had adjacent apartments, and I don't know if it's appropriate to share some of the stories that we encountered during the.
Nope.
Perhaps this podcast is not made for that sort of thing.
No.
Yes, we did overlap for a year before you moved to Indianapolis at the University of Iowa, along with many of our medical school friends who were in Iowa City at the time, which made it easier for us, I guess. It softened the culture shock of moving to Iowa City.
Right.
But I ended up living in Iowa City for 6 years, because after I finished my 3-year residency, I was chief resident for a year, and then I was an academic hospitalist for a couple of years before I decided to pursue a fellowship in pulmonary and critical care medicine. And I came to the University of California, San Diego, UCSD, because I loved the program, I loved the city. I liked the idea of moving to California. That's basically as much thought as I placed into my major career decision of moving to UCSD.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah. And so I did my pulmonary critical care fellowship here, graduated from that in 2012, took 6 months off, and then joined faculty at UCSD in January 2013, and I've been there since.
Okay. And do you feel? And I know you from before, and I know that throughout this process and throughout those years, you've been closely connected to Lebanon. In fact, I think you were one of us who used to visit the most and have the most connections still over there. Is that true?
Yeah. So I never went more than 4 to 6 months without visiting Lebanon. During the years, at the very least, I was going twice a year to Lebanon. Once in the summer, once over the holidays. There were a couple of years here and there where I even went 3 times in 1 year, and that's no small order, as you can tell. To travel so long, so many times a year, and this is part of other travels that I made during the year.
Right, especially from California. Especially from California, it's a very long
especially from
travel.
California. But the first 6 years were in Iowa City. But that's not. I mean, maybe geographically it's closer, but it's not really much easier to travel from a small city like Iowa City.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
whether it's from the Midwest or from California, it is quite the trek.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, someone like you, it's interesting to me just because you grew up in Dubai and spent a big portion of your life there, and then moved to Beirut, where you spent maybe only 7 or 8 years in Beirut, but you still felt a strong connection, even though your parents even lived in Dubai. So what do you think? What do you think produces that connection to Lebanon? I mean, all of us, I think, have that close connection. And I don't know what the force is. Do you have any insight into that? What the force
that is correct. I lived in Lebanon for 9 years. My parents still live in Dubai to this day.
Yep.
But all my long distance treks were to Lebanon. I mean, I did visit Dubai here and there, but it was mostly back to Lebanon. And as you've observed, I developed this connection to Lebanon, despite the fact that I didn't grow up there. It's hard to say. There's a lot of philosophizing that's going to go into me figuring out what it was. First of all, it was the time in my life that I spent in Lebanon. It was kind of, it formed a lot of my personality. It was basically my late teenage years and my early 20s. I made a lot of amazing relationships at AUB. A lot of, so many of the friends that I made at AUB are still very close and I'm in very close contact with to this day. I became closer to my extended family, my cousins, aunts, uncles. And Lebanon, despite Lebanon, despite the way it is, the chaos, the corruption, the frustration, the anger and rage that's going on every day, I just recently read a quote. Lebanon is somewhere that you hate and that you love 1,000 times each day. Now I never went back to work in Lebanon like you did. So I was going back for visits. That's different, right? I can block out a lot of the frustration and the rage that you might experience living there and having to earn an income and raise a family there. So I was shielded from those. I would go and have a great time with my friends and family and catch up. But the bonds that I formed with the country and the relationships that I formed were kind of strong enough that if I stayed away for too long, I'd miss it.
Right, right.
That's what I have. That's superficially what I have so far.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we all, and that's one of the reasons I decided to go back. And even, I can tell you that even working there was nice. I think it's just the way the country is run is what drives you out of it.
Interesting.
It drives you crazy.
You worked there for a couple of years, and we were communicating, you and I, throughout that experience. For at the very least, because I was extremely curious to see how your experience would go.
Yeah.
You were like a guinea pig that we that we sent out to test it out and see how it goes, to see if it's even feasible. And we expected that you had there were a lot of pros and cons, but specifically the work situation. I don't know. I mean, did you feel that the relationships, perhaps, that maybe are formed with staff in general in your workplace are a little bit different?
No, I think it's more of a work becomes more of a social thing over there. So you form more deeper social relationships. For example, I would be walking next to the cafeteria at Riza, and then this surgeon who I still talk to till this day, he would like call me from inside the cafeteria and be like, Khalil, come in, let's drink a cup of coffee now. I'd be like, I have some work to do. He's like, no, just half an hour only, 15 minutes, no worries. And so this is like some of the things that used to happen there, and that made things more social. and made your day maybe less stressful and less tense, I think, despite
Yeah,
everything
no,
that
I
was
can
happening in the
imagine. I
country.
mean, my colleagues here are all amazing. Are all amazing people. I'm very lucky for where I ended up.
Yep.
But just from my experience, having studied there, and I guess I worked as an intern for a year, and just speaking to all of you guys, I would imagine that on average the relationships are a little less formal in Lebanon.
Right. They're more loose and more social. So, but that's not to say. I mean, I also love all my colleagues over here at GW where I work now, and I think it's just a different culture and different kind of relationships that you form, and probably part of the reason a lot of us are drawn back to that culture. I think of
Perhaps
connectivity.
perhaps part of it are the difficulties that we have to confront every day in Lebanon. You have to form those strong relationships because you have to have them to maneuver this chaotic country. You have to help each other out. Otherwise you wouldn't survive. I mean, I'm sure this is the subject of a thesis and can be gone into in much more depth. This is, superficially an impression that I had that perhaps that's one of the reasons the bonds may be so close there, whether they're family bonds, friendship bonds, and professional bonds, is because you need other people. We all need each other to maneuver the difficult, chaotic, and corrupt society.
Yeah, right. And I mean that's one of the things you end up forming is all the time you call people to get things done. It's not like you do stuff online and stuff like that. And I always, even till now, people, for example, ask me, do you know somebody who supplies oxygen in Lebanon? And then I have the numbers of those people. I tell them, all right, this is the number of this guy. Just call him, tell him Khalil Diab sent me to you and he'll take care of you and stuff like that. So these are things
That's
that are,
unbelievable.
these
You
are
could never imagine
priceless.
doing something. I mean, that's sad and heartwarming at the same time.
Right.
You feel that you shouldn't need to kind of try to figure out where to get oxygen when there's patients who need oxygen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's the human connection that helps you out.
Yeah, we'll get there. I think that's the situation there right now at this point. But I know well that you were at one point in time, even when you were in San Diego or at Iowa, even you were still involved in some, or at least participated in some of the protest movements that went on in Lebanon back in 2011 and onwards. Can you tell us a bit about those protests and why you decided at the time, before the country even went into this bad recession, that this was the right thing to do?
But this was back when the Arab Spring started in 2011 and Tunisia and Egypt and so on. And this was, 2011, 2012. I can't remember when the protests were. And there were protests in Beirut that were calling for an overhaul of the political system. And they happened to be around the time that I would go back to Lebanon. I barely had to change my schedule. I just changed it a few days back and forth. And I did attend a few of these demonstrations. And, a lot of the things that the demonstrators were calling for then was an overhaul of the political system. That obviously the protests were unsuccessful. Nothing really changed much. And, a lot of the demonstrators were forecasting that if things didn't change, that things would come crashing down. And lo and behold, here we are.
Yep. And I think, thinking now in retrospect, I think those demonstrators were doing the right thing. And I think also, I was there during the October 17th protests and onwards. And I think, and what bothers me is that a lot of these demonstrators truly wanted this change to happen, but were not able to do so. And hence all the frustrations that are ongoing right now and the continued decline of the country at this point.
Every time these demonstrations come up, there's always accusations of these demonstrations being being orchestrated and so on. Who knows? There's tens of thousands of people there. All I can say is the people that I encountered in the demonstrations, they were all kind of genuinely wanting the best, and I mean, these demonstrations possibly did not have a completely organized agenda of how to change the country, um, but obviously a change was sorely needed, and I mean it was obvious then, and it's more obvious now. But for some reason, the large, as bigger and bigger the catastrophes occur, the less and less it appears that the political system can change. But that's beyond anything that I can come up with.
Yeah, right. I mean, we can see what went on this year and all the trials for change that people did. I mean, if you think about it, how much can one country sustain? I mean, you had the complete economic crash and the complete banking sector crash that happened starting in October and is still getting worse to this day without any plan of fixing it and without any deal with the International Monetary Fund to fix it. Then you got the August 4th Beirut explosion, which was massive, with no accountability so far, and nobody placed in jail at this point due to that explosion, which is crazy in any other country, I think, in the world. And on top of that, you've got the COVID-19 pandemic now being completely out of control, also because of significant mismanagement that happened in the country. So it's just a lot of mismanagement that has led to a multitude of disasters that are occurring in the country at this point. And I think
that's the curse. That's the curse of
Yeah.
being Lebanese.
yeah
I mean, I can't compare my experience to the Lebanese who were in Lebanon throughout all these crises. But just being here so far away and hearing one after another, first with the assassination of the prime minister. We were in the U.S. at the time, Iowa City, and then one assassination after another, one crisis after another, one explosion after another. Every day you wake up and you wonder. A lot of us lost some people. It's impacted all of us in different ways, and this is independent of our field. I know this is called the Lebanese Physicians Podcast, but just being Lebanese in general. I mean, the banking system. I mean, my parents had most of the retirement savings in Lebanese banks. My uncle's business is in the port, in the harbor where the explosion happened. Thankfully, nobody got hurt. Just a lot of property damage from our standpoint. But it's you resign yourself to the fate of being Lebanese, and just one of these things, of waking up one day and hearing about yet another catastrophe.
Right. And I think that's why a lot of people a lot of people want to change and they still want change, but a lot of people have gotten frustrated with the system and have decided to pack up and leave. And but some other people, which I know, some of them are physicians I've worked with. I mean, I talked to one of them a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I'm staying. He's like, I'm going to try the hardest possible to stay. And I know this guy has a way out, but he's like, I'm going to try the hardest possible to stay. I don't want to leave. I'm going to just keep fighting. And I'm impressed actually by these people, just because at this point it seems like you're fighting a system that cannot change, and you are living under a political system that is using you and abusing you. And not providing you with anything.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That person, that physician that you're talking about, has a way out. It
Right.
feels like if you're Lebanese, you need to have a way out.
Right,
Even if you
right.
decide to stay in the country, you need to be working on some plan B, right? And
Right.
not most Lebanese can't do that. That's unfortunate. I mean, most Lebanese may not have access to a plan B,
Right,
which is sad. We did. I'm a dual citizen right now, so and that's something. And that's the sad thing, is there's a brain drain now. Everybody who has any opportunity or resources is considering leaving the country, and I know many have already left.
Right.
With you and your family being
Right. And I think, I mean, and that brings me to another topic, which reminds me of us. I mean, I was there. I worked with a lot of students and trainees and residents who were great trainees and students who also want a future in medicine. And at this point, it seems the future is not good if they just decide to train and stay in Lebanon and work without going outside. And the issue with that is a lot of them, if they want to go to the US, to Germany, to the UK, to even France or other countries, they have to sit for exams, they have to go do electives, meet people, and all of this costs what we call quote unquote fresh dollars and not the money that currently you have in Lebanese banks, which is local dollars or lullers or biras or whatever term that has been coined for this money, and some of them point blank told me, I mean, we have difficulty going to the US at this point because our parents' money is all stuck in the Lebanese banks, and it's going to be very hard for them to pay all this money for us to do our USMLEs. And that made me feel bad because I feel that they may not have the same opportunities that we had ourselves, or if they do, it's much harder for them to navigate them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. That's yet an additional obstacle now placed for Lebanese medicine graduates.
Right, right.
And as we know, I don't know what the statistics are, but right, correct me if I'm wrong, Khalid, but there's way too many medical school graduates in Lebanon than more than the country can absorb. So it's like the way, I mean, for the size of the country, we have too many medical school graduates. So it's like the system was made to export physicians. So there needs to be some facilitation, some help for all these graduates that have yet another door closed in their face.
Right, and part of this, I think, is again lack of governmental planning, because you always have to assess how many graduates of each field or profession you need in the country before you accept to open more programs. And I'm sure this was not assessed, and now you have more than 7 medical schools in a country of 4.5 million people, which is crazy. Probably, if you look at California,
that's more a testament to the Lebanese political system, chaos, and lack of oversight and planning.
Right. And I think as we talk, I mean, that's what I'm doing. Part of the reason I'm doing this podcast also as we talk to different physicians in the diaspora and in Lebanon, is to try to see if we can devise ways to help these students be able to achieve what they want to achieve and go to the US or any other country that they want to train in without having the economic situation or money as a hindrance to them to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this was a good discussion, Dr. Maraachli, and I think we've discussed quite a bit about the country, about the situation there, and about our connections to the country. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, in addition to all of this, of course, all this has come crashing down at the time that the pandemic is going on, and hospital facilities are scarce now in Lebanon, which just, you're always afraid for your family. You're always afraid for your family. If anybody needed to be hospitalized right now, whether it's for a coronavirus infection or otherwise. I myself, since you're interviewing individuals to hear their story, we started off this podcast with how frequently I went back to Lebanon. Well, I haven't been to Lebanon now in over a year. So this is the longest that I've been away from Lebanon since I left all those years ago and came to the U.S. So that's just kind of an added stress. I haven't seen my parents also in over a year. So yeah, that's just something else that we live with.
Right, and I think, I mean, since you mentioned the situation there right now, I mean, I can tell you the bed situation seems to be very tight in all the hospitals, and in some situations, I mean, the Red Cross has to leave patients outside of the ERs sitting there for their families to try to find beds, and then they give them oxygen in their cars, or they get them into the gates, put them outside, give them oxygen because there's no beds for them that are available. And then when people get admitted, I mean, there's medications that people cannot find. It's all in the black market. I have numbers now of like pharmacies on the black market where you can buy your remdesivir or
Wow.
baracetinib or whatever medicine that you might need for your COVID-19 pneumonia. Not Decadron for sure. That's pretty easy to find. But if you want to go
Crazy.
beyond that, it's a lot of this is on the black market, and even oxygen is not to be found as easily now. And some people are asking for fresh dollars to provide people with oxygen. So it's
Wow.
hard for people to even get sick, and let alone get treated when they get sick.
Yeah.
So this is part of the
There you have
situation.
it.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, Dr. Maraachli, thank you for being on this podcast with us, and so thank you for listening to this podcast. Again, it was with Dr. Wael Maraachli, who is currently an associate professor at the University of California, San Diego, and hopefully in our next podcasts, I will discussing with some people who are doing some initiatives towards Lebanon, and I'm trying to get to discuss too with some of the physicians practicing currently in Lebanon to get their perspective on the situation there. Thank you very much for listening.